up, everyone? Welcome to the J&J Power Hour. We're back for episode, what is this, 4? Episode number 4? Yeah, number 4. How have we already... Things like this go so quickly, don't they? You're like, oh, we've already done 4 episodes now. I know that doesn't seem like that many, but like, that's 4 weeks that we've been...
Yeah, it's a month worth of content. That's a decent amount of time.
Yeah, and we've done like... We're doing all these different topics. Like last week we talked about Britney Spears of all things. We had like an hour and a bit conversation about Britney. Like that's so... I've never done podcasts like this where it's like, so like, what's the word? Just like chop and changey of like what we're talking about. It's fun because you don't have to talk about the same thing every week because it gets boring. Like wrestling podcasts, hey, I'm not knocking any wrestling podcasts, but man, when you just talk about the same thing every week, it's like, this is what happened on Raw. It's like,
it's good to break it up it's good to break it up, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like I knew when we were diving into this, we had talks and we were like, yeah, we're going to do different things. Like we'll have wrestling shows, you know, but we're not only going to talk about wrestling, we're going to talk about other stuff. So I was excited about it, but like, I never thought that I'd be having an hour-long conversation on a podcast about Britney Spears. No. I never thought that, ever. And it was a really good one. I thought it was a very good episode and we had fun and we, you know, some heavy stuff, but it was a good one. But like, if you would have told me that a couple months ago, like, hey, you're going to be having a chat about Britney, I would have been like, well, okay, like, whatever.
Yeah. But how am I going to talk about an hour-long conversation about Britney? Like how it's so weird how you can have one little topic and it just goes for that long because it goes into so many different things and whatever. I've noticed something in the comments of these shows too. Everyone's like, Josh, you're such a hand talker. I know. I can't help moving my hands around. It just happens. Me and you are so different in that because you're not expressive with your hands. For some reason, I've always been one to just talk with my hands. I don't know why, but people are pointing it out and I'm like, oh my God, now I'm conscious of it. And I'm like, I'm just gonna like tie my hands up or something.
I think I do it more in real life. So I'm mainly Italian and Italian people.
Oh, like Tony D'Angelo. What a guy.
Yeah. What a guy. And like, you know, holidays and stuff like that, all we do is we're loud, we're demonstrative, we talk with our hand. Like, so I feel like in person, if you met me in person, you would notice it a lot more than when I'm kind of in this setting. Mm-hmm. But I usually do talk with I've been told that by people as well. Like, yo, use your hands. I'm like, well, I'm Italian.
I always do it. I just can't help it. I'm doing it now and I don't even mean to be doing it. I don't know what are you meant to do with your hands? Do you just like sit here and
I just kind of keep them. I like kind of grasp the microphone. I'm just like, yeah. And I just kind of like, I don't know. I don't really pay attention to it. Like, I'm like you. If someone told me about it, it's all I'd be like, okay, well, that's
all I think about
now. I'm going to only think about that. So.
That's all I think about now, but oh well. Before we get into today's topic, which actually JPJ picked, and he'll explain it in a second, we record this always before Raw. Now, technically, it's not, because we're in different time zones, obviously, technically it's not this day anymore, but I just want to quickly bring it up because obviously it's a part of me. Yesterday for me, today for you is coming out day, and I just want to quickly say, obviously, I've told my story. I don't need to tell it anymore. You can go and find it, and most people know my story if you need to, but I can imagine when these days come up for me a couple years back, I felt this enormous amount of pressure on myself. I'm like, oh my God, I have to do it today. Oh my God, like if I don't do it today, it's not going to mean anything. Don't ever feel pressured by these kind of days. Yes, they're a celebration of these kind of things, but you'll know when you're ready for that kind of stuff. I just wanted to put that out into the world. Yes, it'll be a couple days post this by the time it releases, but you know when you're ready, you know when the time's right, and don't feel pressured. It's still valid. It's still, everything will be, I know it doesn't seem like it, but everything will be A-okay. Trust me. I was in the same spot as many people probably, whether they're listening to this or not. I was in that spot for a long time where you're like, nothing's going to be okay. I'm never going to be able to do this. How am I going to do this? You'll get to a point, and trust me, it's not like, I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying it's the best situation for everybody because everybody's different. However, in my experience, it's been the best thing I've ever done. So just with these kind of days and stuff like that, again, I know this is coming out a couple days later, but just every day that you feel this kind of pressure on you, no matter what you're where you are in your head, just take it slow. Don't rush into that kind of stuff. You can't rush being ready. I don't know if you'll ever truly feel 100% like you're ready, but you'll know. Something comes over you like, it's time to do this. So I just wanted to put that out there for the rest of just before we get started. But I mean, you probably are just like, yes, I don't really, you can't. I understand there's probably not much you can add to that, but
No, but take all the time you need, but
Mhm.
everyone should be able to be who they are. That's all I will say. And
100%.
it comes out at different times. People, takes longer, takes shorter, whatever. As long as at some point you can be happy with who you are and let the world know who you are, that's what everyone should
Hey, take
be
it
able
from
to
me.
do.
I know
So,
I seem very comfortable in my own skin, but I technically come out quite late. I was 24 when I came out. I only came out last year. So technically, a lot of people would consider that like I waited a long time. So there's no time limit on it.
yeah, there's no time limit.
You never
There's no
truly
time
know. And it's not just about sexuality. It's not just about who you're attracted to. It's about the comfortableness of your own self. And until you're comfortable, I truly believe this. Again, it's different for everybody, but I truly believe until you're comfortable with yourself, you can't tell other people. So accept it for yourself first, and then get to that spot where you feel like you can tell the world in a sense. So, but I just wanted to put that out there before we moved on into wrestling talk. We're doing a wrestling show today, but
Yeah.
I said to JPJ, I've picked the first three topics, and I was like, oh wow, I'm being very rude here. Let's give JPJ some fucking love and be like, hey, do you want to actually pick a topic? Because you can. And he gave me some ones, but I feel like you gave me a few, and we might do that other one a little later. But we decided on wrestling. Wrestling's again very easy for us to talk about, and wrestling is probably the most subjective thing I know.
Yeah.
It's you never really truly meet with wrestling, do you? There's always some little variant that you're like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
well, this person doesn't like this,
Yeah.
and this person likes this. So, I'll handball this to you because, well, that way, not that way, because that's on the screen. But you can explain your thought process going into this one.
Yeah, so I did come up with a couple. I had wrestling one and a non-wrestling one. I was kind of bouncing them around. And when I threw them your way, I feel like we were both kind of on the same page of like, ooh, the wrestling one feels like one we could probably dive like a deeper conversation into because of that subjectiveness
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. And I knew I wanted to have something like, what's the best of something, but I didn't want to do the typical like, who's the best wrestler ever? Like I wanted something a little bit more that you had to think about. So I came up with what is the best WrestleMania main event of all time. Technically, there have been 38 matches of WrestleMania main events. 38. So actually, that might even be a lie. No, 39 matches because the
39,
last two
have had
two main
technically
events.
two main
Yes,
events. Yeah.
correct. So 39 matches. So it gave us a lot of things to think about. Now, obviously, regardless of that, I feel like if you're a wrestling fan and you have been for a long time, there's going to be probably 4, 5, 6 that really you're like, okay. And then you kind of dive in. But I thought it was a good topic, and wrestling subjective. I might think very highly of a WrestleMania main event that you are like, no, that one didn't do it for me. And that's, I just thought it would be a good, fun chat where you and I would have some really good back and forth about what we think is the best WrestleMania main event of all time. And the
WrestleMania is
comments
it's so, because we said this in our little pre-chat before we recorded.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many matches at WrestleMania that I'm like, this one. I'm like, wait a minute. None of these went on last, because when we talk WrestleMania main events, we're not just talking about like quote unquote the main event, the headline. It's the last match on the show, which sometimes, well, I would say more often than not, is not the best match on the show. It doesn't even necessarily have the most hype. A lot of these, like a lot of these, especially, I would say in the last however many years, WrestleMania is no longer built on one match. It's now built on 4 or 5 matches because either WrestleMania, like the last couple of years, are 2 nights, or WrestleMania is like a 6-hour show, and you can't just have a 6-hour show and build it on one. You'd be in pretty dire strait if you're building a 6-hour show on one match. That would be a bold move to do. So I was thinking about all these matches, and I'm like, oh, this one. And I'm like, none of these went on last. So, I mean, good for you on the topic, because it did throw me a little bit when you first gave it to me,
Right?
because I'm like, oh, that one, and I'm like, that didn't go on last, so I
Yeah,
can't
that
really
wasn't
say
the main
that one.
event.
But
Yeah.
but that being said, there's a lot of really great WrestleMania main events, like really great
Oh yeah.
WrestleMania main
Yeah.
events. So it's gonna be interesting to kind of see where you're at. But you're the man in charge of this one. You can go
Oof.
first on this one. So good luck.
Well, see, the thing is, I don't know if we should just come right out and say, all right, so I'll ask you this because you're a little younger than me. So what's the first WrestleMania you remember?
That I
Like,
remember.
what was the first one you saw that like you obviously I'm sure you went back and seen most of them
Oh
now,
yeah, I've
or
seen
all
a
of
lot.
them.
Oh
Yeah.
well, not old wrestling. Old
Well,
wrestling
maybe.
stinks.
Well, see, so this is where it's different because when I first started watching wrestling, it was around WrestleMania 8,
Oh
9.
yeah, it was not me.
Yeah, yeah. But then back in video stores and stuff like that, I would go back and rent tapes, and so like I've seen WrestleMania 1, 2, like all those old
I've
events
never
too.
watched.
So
I don't think I've ever watched WrestleMania 1. I'll
it's
put that
okay.
out there.
It's okay. Yeah.
I think I've watched everything from like 13, 12, and then
Oh,
little
okay.
bits and pieces of other ones. Like I've always, like, I've watched the ladder match that was at like WrestleMania, like
10.
the 10.
Michaels and
I've
Razor
watched that,
Ramon.
and I've watched
Yeah.
Owen and Brett, and I've watched just different things over the times of little things, but not in full. I've never watched it, but okay, so here's my thing with wrestling. Anything like, not anything, there's always going to be exceptions to this rule, but like for the most part, anything like pre-96 wrestling, I have no time for.
Okay.
I think it's
Okay.
bad. I genuinely think
All
it's bad.
All right.
And again, there's always exceptions. There's always great matches in there, and there's always great
Yeah.
little bits. I'm like, oh, that's good. But for the most part, I'm like, I can't watch this. And a lot of people would probably say that are a lot older than me, but like, I can't watch new wrestling, and that's fine. It's just what I grew up on. But to answer your original question, the first one I know I watched ones before this because I was younger, and my brother has said you were there when I watched this live. But the first one that I can actually remember, like, vividly watching is WrestleMania 18. I can remember
Okay.
sitting down and watching that.
Triple H and Chris Jericho was the main event.
Yeah,
But
and at
like,
the
we
time,
talked about,
I was like 6 years old. So, like, anything was good to me at that point. Like, I just loved
yeah,
everything. So, but I know, and obviously I've watched WrestleManias before that, after that, but like, I know that my brother said you watched 17, and I watched WrestleMania 2000, which is bad, by the way. WrestleMania 2000 is not very good. Giddy, get out of the blinds. I'm trying to record
did
here,
you
mate.
see Triple H? Something just came out on I saw some Twitter banter about it where so at WrestleMania 16, Triple H said in an interview, not recently, obviously, because he's been dealing with his health stuff, but like he said in an interview that it was originally supposed to be him and The Rock
Yeah, I
in an
seen that on
Iron Man
Twitter.
match.
Mm,
But
so much better.
Mick Foley was coming back,
then they
and so
did
they went with the 4-way, and then they did the
McMahon.
Iron Man match at like a Judgment Day later on
Yeah,
with him and The Rock.
It's so
Man, that
weird.
would have been great. That's a great
Austin,
feud.
Triple H and Rock is probably, in my opinion, the best feud to never have a WrestleMania match.
Mm-hmm. Never
Because
for the world title either.
you had
Well, later on it was, but like the height of
but
it was
like,
it was an IC title feud
especially at that
for
time,
like
like, there
a
was
lot of
nothing
it.
bigger than WrestleMania. I know there is to a certain
Yeah.
point now, but you have so many. The thing with WWE now is that they have so many big shows. Like, even I know I'm not going to personally watch Crown Jewel because I don't have time for it, but look at all the matches that are taking place. Like, that's considered like a big show, and like, so I feel like there was more like on WrestleMania. I have no way else to explain it. It's just there was more,
Yeah,
like, it felt
I
big.
agree.
But that WrestleMania, man, I can say this. I feel pretty sure I can speak for you. We're not gonna have that 4 McMahon bullshit in our top WrestleMania main event. Like, it was just.
No.
It's not the worst match I've ever seen, but like, there was some poor Mick Foley, like when he missed the table, and like,
Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
wasn't like the 4 McMahon thing. And WrestleMania 2000 in general, like, it's all multi-person matches, is it not? Like, every match on the
I think
card.
Yeah, I think I'd have to go back and look at the card, but I think you're right there.
The
I think there's
only
like very
thing
few singles
The
matches,
only thing I
like
remember from
very few.
WrestleMania 2000 being good is the triangle ladder match, which kind of spawned TLC. Like it was the
Yes.
heart. Like that was good. Um, but people don't look at that match, do they? That triangle ladder match because of TLC come in SummerSlam of that year, and people are like, well, I don't really remember the triangle ladder match from WrestleMania 2000. But yeah, WrestleMania 2000 that would probably be on my list of one of the worst WrestleManias
The
ever.
worst ones? Yeah.
It's
I
not
mean,
the
it's
worst, I don't think, but it's definitely it's in the bubble of that. But yeah, WrestleMania
yeah.
18 is the first one I can vividly remember sitting down and watching. Like I can remember that. Again, I know that my brother had said I'd watched at least the two before with him, but I was very young and I can't really remember. Obviously, I've gone back and I've watched all of these things since, so I have obviously a pretty
Yeah.
good understanding. But yeah, WrestleMania. So again, that's where our age comes into play. WrestleMania 18 is the one that I can remember watching, which is,
Okay.
it's a pretty good Mania, I would say.
No, 18 is good.
Yeah.
18 is good. All right. So for me, because I kind of went through all, you look at the list of all the ones, and I kind of bulleted like 6 that kind of stuck out to me. And I was like, all right, I would consider these 6, in my personal opinion, to be kind of the only ones in the discussion of what could be the best WrestleMania main event of all time. So I don't know if you have a couple that automatically just once you were like, all right, well, I think I know where I'm going. Or
I
if you
do.
maybe if we don't just go straight to the one first, maybe we go to like 3 that you're like,
Okay, I
okay,
can do
these
that.
3 stick out to me.
All right, so I'll do my
Something like that.
I can do my my one at the very end, but I can do
Okay.
two that stick out to me. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, I'll let you go first.
All right, so these the 3. I'll leave my like choice at the very end, but ones that come to my mind is Michael's Taker from WrestleMania 26. I know it's
Mhm.
not as good as WrestleMania 25, but in terms of like WrestleMania main events, like you don't get much bigger than Streak in career. And Michaels and Taker at that point in their career, there's a certain level of maybe they weren't at the peak performance of their careers. They probably had peaks a little earlier. But like there's a certain level of respect that just especially coming off of WrestleMania 25, which I consider the greatest WrestleMania match ever. One of the best wrestling matches I've ever seen, just in terms of pure, like, if you were to write a formula on how to have a wrestling match, you don't really get much better than Taker and Michaels, really.
No, it's really good.
So,
Really good.
especially because coming up to WrestleMania 25 and 26, it had been a long time since they've been in the ring together. Like, a long time. I believe the
Yeah.
last match they had before that was the casket match in 98. I could be wrong.
Leading into WrestleMania 14. Yeah, no,
I think that might have been
I
the
think
last
you
one
might
they
be right because
touched.
Sean
went,
went away.
and then they were on different
Sean went
brands
away.
the whole
Yeah.
time. Like Taker was SmackDown, Michaels was Raw. So they really had.
Well, they had that tease at the end of the Royal Rumble.
They had that was the first time I remember, like the 2007, the one that Taker won.
It was leading into WrestleMania 24 where Taker fought. Right, he won the
No,
Rumble and
he
fought
won
Edge.
He won the Rumble and fought Batista at 23.
That's right.
And then the next year they both started the Rumble and they had that big long. They were both in the
Yes.
Rumble and they eliminated one another, or like Michaels eliminated Taker, I should say. And then that was really well done in the terms of like they will eventually fight at WrestleMania. But 26, it's I know a lot of people are like, but it's not as good as the first one. Okay, it's not. It's plain and simple. I'm not going to argue that point because it is not as good as the first one at all. But it is a very good match, and like it's very like in terms of main event WrestleMania matches, there's only a few that I could really put above that. To be completely
only
honest,
a few WrestleMania matches that ended up main eventing that were also not for a title.
Yeah,
as well. Like
and
that match was not for a title. That was a streak versus career. But because it was those, like you said, because it was those 2 guys, and it was that versus that, it made perfect sense. Like going into it, nothing else should have main evented. Nothing else,
especially with the title matches on that show, that was Edge and Jericho and like Batista and Cena. Like
yeah. Yeah. And
whatever.
I just
26
like
is
you
not a
said,
great
like
WrestleMania to me. My
no, and I feel like you said though, like those two guys, like at that time, everyone knew it was coming to the end. And like those were two of the only guys, them two and Triple H, which at that time Triple H at 25 and 26 was Triple H still a full-time guy, or he already
yeah,
had
so
moved to part-time?
I believe he worked
Or
with
was it shortly after
Sheamus.
that?
He worked with Sheamus at that WrestleMania in 26, I believe, and that was his last like full time. That was the end of his
Yeah.
last like full time match, and then because obviously
He did the
he did
Undertaker
Taker,
stuff.
he did Taker
Yeah.
for the next 2 years. So,
Yeah.
and he
So
was only doing
I
those
felt
matches, wasn't he? Oh, he did like a
yeah.
couple, but nothing
Well,
full
he did a
time.
couple. He fought Brock and Punk at one point. Like, yeah,
Oh
he did stuff.
yeah, he fought Punk. I forgot.
Yeah, yeah. Good lord. Good lord. But I feel like at that point, like those two guys, they kind of hit at that time every generation of wrestling fan.
hmm
So you had like the older people, which, like people that are slightly older than me, they knew who The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels were because they had been around since
The
Michaels was in WWF in the 80s, the late
80s, yeah.
80s, and then Taker came right in 90, right? So they've been around. People that were my age, generate like a generation under that, right in the heyday. And then even people like you, generation under, you come in at around WrestleMania 16, 17, 18. They were still at such an elite level for such a long time after that they mattered to you too.
Even the
So
generation below me, you could argue that
yeah,
like the new
yeah,
fans, like the 6, 7, 8 year olds were just getting into wrestling. I mean, Taker and Michaels were still, they were the
yeah,
guys still.
yeah, yeah.
um,
And there's not a lot of performers that you can say that about, right? So like
not really.
that match at 25 when they just knocked it out of the park. Like me personally, I was not a full-time wrestling watcher at that point.
Oh,
I was paying attention on the webs on like the websites, and I would watch the big events, but I was, in my early 20s doing whatever, working, whatever, living the early 20 life. And I wasn't making time every week to make sure I was home at 8 o'clock on Monday nights to watch Raw, or 8 o'clock on Thursday. You know what I mean? I was just living my life. But I always kept up with it. But once, and I didn't watch that WrestleMania live.
oh,
So
shitty. That's a
once I,
shitty predicament because that's a good Mania. 25 is a
I know.
good Mania.
I know. So I kind of heard, through the grapevines, like, yo, Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, they had a match at WrestleMania.
But
And it was
even you
like,
weren't watching wrestling at the time, but I could imagine like you'd hear those names and go, "Ding!" Well,
oh,
obviously,
of course. Yeah, 100%. Like, I still knew everything that was happening. I would still, the shows I didn't watch, I would read the recap. Like, I still knew what was going on. I just wasn't watching it all the time. Like, I'm
yeah,
committed to watching it all the time.
yeah.
So when I heard, like, yo, they had a really, like, a special type match, like, it was special, not just good, but like, you got to watch it. That, and I watched that match, I was like, okay. And then I remember that's when I started getting back into it. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to start watching this and make time for it. And like, so that match, along with like characters like Punk and, I really like Dolph Ziggler back then, like those type of guys got me. And I was like, okay, I'm back in now.
Yeah.
But that Michaels and Taker match from 25
The
is,
gateway match. It
yeah,
got you in
it
there.
really was.
But that 26 match, it is a fantastic match. I think it just gets looked at because of 25 being so perfect. Like there was no way
Exactly.
in hell, not even Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker, two of the greatest ever, could eclipse their first match. It just wasn't going to
Could not.
happen.
Yeah.
It was
No.
no one. Imagine that pressure. But I mean, main event, it still was very, very good. It was a brilliant end because it really was like Rick and Shawn at 24. Like the I'm sorry, I love you with the, like when Taker kind of hit him and then he kicked out and then he looked at him and, gave him the slap and gave him like the end me and then the jumping
Yeah.
tombstone. Like you can't really write a better finish than that, can you? Like that's just so
No.
storybook and two of the
It's so
greatest
good.
storytellers. I would say Shawn and Taker are the two greatest storytellers in the ring ever. I'll put that out in the
All right.
world. I think they're the two greatest storytellers ever. So, I mean, just so good. And so that would
Yeah.
be in my list. I'll handball it to you before I give my second one because I think that's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, all right. So because you're not really a super early guy, I
It's fine.
think the one that stands out the most to me, because I think it was one of the better stories ever told back then, were the mega powers colliding at WrestleMania 5 when
Mhm.
it's Hogan versus Savage.
I've
In
watched
my
that.
opinion, the wrong guy won. The wrong guy won. Savage should have 100% won that.
He was on his
And they
way
should
out
have
or something,
made
though, wasn't he?
Savage.
Or was he? Was that just before he went to commentary, or am I thinking that's way later?
He did a couple more. So WrestleMania 6, he was in like a nothing tag. This is Savage now. He was in a nothing mixed tag against Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire. And then at WrestleMania 7, he had a career match, which I think is the Ultimate Warrior's best match, like by far, because Savage got, he had a career match when he was the Macho King still. He had a career match with Warrior, which he lost, and then he kind of shifted
Right.
to commentary a little bit.
By the way, I'll just put
this
this
was
out
his-
there. I have no time for the Ultimate Warrior. I think he's terrible.
Oh, I don't either. Yeah, I don't either. I don't. But Savage, who's like one of my guys, he's like
he's great.
Yeah, I love him. I just think at that point in time, I think obviously Hogan's going to win. He's the good guy. He's going to win, send the people home happy, whatever. But I just thought for that story, Savage, like Hogan was the heel in that story. Everything Hogan was doing was heelish, but they were just like, no, Hogan's the good guy. So everyone was just still, so like Hogan's trying to steal Savage's girl. Like that.
Yeah.
That's how this whole thing starts. And Hogan is doing some shady shit. Like it's not, he's not just being, it's not all a misunderstanding. Like if you watch some of that, Savage is like, yo, dude, like what is this? So I don't know. I obviously think Savage should have won, but that one from an early standpoint of the early batches of like the Hogan era, we'll call it. Obviously Hogan and Andre from a significance standpoint is up there, but the match itself, not good. Andre was way past anything. Like he could barely move, the poor guy.
And I don't really, to be completely honest, I don't really find Hogan, not just personal bullshit aside, just as a worker, it's not
terrible.
Because what I grew up on was a work rate that was increasing. It's not the work rate we're at now, but like it was certainly increasing in the late 90s from like the Hogan era. It was very different.
It's so bizarre to me too, because like if you ever go back and watch it, it's like the way Hogan wrestled, he wrestled as a heel. He would rake eyes, scratch backs.
No sell.
He would choke people. No sell stuff. Like he wrestled 100% like a heel would wrestle.
Yeah.
But he was the guy the machine was behind, and people ate that shit up.
Yeah,
I did. I was a little kid.
Yeah, I was gonna say little kids.
Like
Hogan. You probably loved Warrior, like because it was fast.
All the colorful macho, Macho Man with the colors. Like that's what worked back then. You know what I mean?
No, I get you.
But when you look back on it now, it's like it was completely
bad.
Opposite. Like Hogan should have been the bad guy that everybody was going, I don't know, whatever.
I've watched that match. I don't really have much to add to it because I've only probably watched it once in my life.
I figured I would get that one out of the way now, and then we can talk, because the rest of mine are more current-ish.
I guess my second one is a little different to that. A little different. I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty certain this went on last. But if it isn't, then just sue me. WrestleMania 19 was Brock and Angle, right?
Oh yeah, that's on my list.
That's my second one.
Fantastic.
It's like to know what Angle was going through at that stage with pretty much just a broken neck again. And everything that went into that, and that time that there was nobody in that time, because this is when you got to remember 2003 is when this happened. So these are all of like that year and a half leading into that is really the first memories I have of vividly watching wrestling, like as a kid. So this is like prime, like just absorbing so much information for me,
absorbing everything,
and I'm just a kid, and I remember being so angry at Brock Lesnar because he come out of nowhere, and he was just like, like it was just like, holy crap. I remember when he won the Royal Rumble in 2003, going into this match.
That one? That was in Boston, Massachusetts.
Oh, and
I was there.
Just his rise, and even looking back on it years later, it's like it's hard to really argue that anyone has had a better first year in wrestling than Brock. There's only a few that come into mind, like maybe Angle would probably be another one,
Angle's one of them.
and
I would say
Ronda.
Ronda Rousey.
And
Ronda
Ronda.
Rousey would have
They're
that.
probably
Yep.
the three that have had the best first years in wrestling ever. I know Brock obviously had a wrestling background, but as opposed to like Ronda and Angle, but like his destruction that he caused in that first year,
Oh.
like Rock, and even just his first program with the Hardys, I remember that so clearly, and just him destroying who was more loved by that age
Oh,
group
yeah.
than the Hardys. There was
Of
nobody.
course. Of course.
And him destroying them and being with Paul Heyman and me then learning about Paul Heyman, and like there was just so much significance leading into that match. And then the match itself is just it's Kurt Angle. I mean, Kurt is so fantastic, and I didn't appreciate Kurt Angle until much later, when I actually understood what wrestling was about and the art of wrestling. Like, pure wrestling, there's a very small group at the top, and Angle is in that, if not on the top of that group, of just how good you are at just being a great wrestler. Angle's so good, and Angle and Lesnar was just, minus the shooting star press, which you could probably argue
Lesnar almost hurt himself.
You could argue
that added to the match.
Exactly. You could argue that it made it better than him just hitting it.
Yeah,
so
that added to everything that went on. But like,
and I guess like
was a
what were we gonna say?
There was a stipulation, right, on that one. Like, if Angle got counted out or DQ'd or something like that, he still would lose the title, right?
Yeah, something like that.
So there was like that added thing too, like a little bit.
And that story going into that was so simple and so pure. And being SmackDown at that time too was just, SmackDown was the wrestling show. It was like the wrestlers were on that show, as opposed to Raw had more of the entertainment side of things. And again, maybe not so much at that age I was appreciating that, but older, I'd go back and watch SmackDown and be like, wow, this is like just pure wrestling. Like, you had all of the wrestlers on that show. So Angle and Lesnar will always come to mind in that, just because it's phenomenal. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, that was on my list. Yeah, it's so good. They're both just at the, and again, Lesnar's still going, obviously.
Yeah.
But
I mean, if Angle got back in the ring, and I could imagine, I don't think it would be too far of a step behind, to be completely honest, because Angle is just so good.
Yeah. So they were both at the top of their game, and like you said, Angle, with how beaten down he was, to still go out there and have that type of match, it was just like, man, it was just next level stuff. So that was on my list. Another one that was on my list, which it has a participant in it.
Oh, I know where you're going. And
yes, yeah. So I don't know how you want to handle this.
Well, I know what you're talking. WrestleMania 20, aren't you?
Yes.
That's
my main event.
That's my number one.
Okay. Well then, okay.
I know it's very touchy because of Chris Benoit and everything like that. But we'll just say this: we know what Benoit did, and it's hard to talk about. And I know some people won't like to talk about it, but I don't have. Well, I always have it lingering over my head. But Chris Benoit, when I talk about great wrestlers with Angle, Benoit's probably at the top of that list for me, because Benoit is. I just don't think I've ever seen a better, like, just bell-to-bell wrestler than Chris Benoit. Like, he's really good at wrestling. And I know what he did obviously we don't just discredit that, because it's hard to talk about him. And I don't think he should ever be, like, celebrated in a sense. But that main event at WrestleMania 20 is, like, probably the best triple threat match I've ever seen. Like, it's so good. It's Triple H, it's Michaels, it's Benoit, it's MSG, it's Benoit finally getting the World Heavyweight Championship.
Yeah,
like, the moment name a better Eddie, and there's nothing.
The moment at the end with him and Eddie, and it just everything involved.
It's so good.
It's such a good match, and it's like you said, it's touchy to talk about, especially like when you consider it to be, it's your number one. It's in that discussion for me,
There's just like the people that I put in that top kind of group is like Angle, Benoit, Dean Malenko, Eddie. I don't really put too many more people in there. Like, it's like those are like the group that are just like I'm not saying like the best wrestlers ever. I'm just saying like pure wrestling, like pure bell to bell technical wrestling. You could argue that, I know Spencer will friggin' never let me hear the end of this, but you could argue that Brett goes in that list. But I feel like there's better like workers in the sense of like the whole package of wrestling. But when you talk like technical wrestling, like name one time that you can remember that Chris Benoit, quote unquote, botched.
Yeah.
I can't.
Or even had like,
a
I'm
stinker.
sure he had, I was going to say, I'm sure he had matches that were like not as good as what you expect.
But like not as good
I
as,
can't remember. When did he ever have a dud?
Yeah,
Yeah, like a stinker, a dud. Like when did that happen? Personally, you just mentioned the 2003 Royal Rumble. The best wrestling match I've ever seen live with my own eyes was from that Royal Rumble, and it was Benoit versus Kurt Angle.
I mean,
and that match happened, and I was with my buddy, and we were like, during it openly, we were like, this is holy shit. Like, this is like, wow. And you're in it. The crowd was in it. Boston is a relatively pretty good wrestling town. We get jacked up and loud. So like we were in it, and we were like, whoa. And he ended up losing, so he didn't get that moment yet, which happened at, so he didn't win. He didn't get the moment, but they cut to the replays, and when they came back, and it's still on the Peacock or the network, whatever you have, he got a standing ovation from the whole audience, a standing ovation for like minutes because of the effort in that match and how good of a match that was. And at the time, how much of a fan favorite he was. People loved him.
Not only that, you made Triple H tap out. That did not happen in that. Triple H was Evolution. Like, this was Triple H I would argue that Triple H was at his peak in the Ruthless Aggression era more so than the Attitude era. Triple H was the heel. He was the dude. He was at the top of Raw for many years. A lot of people don't like that. I have no problem with Triple H. But Triple H tapped out to Chris Benoit. And like, it's Shawn Michaels in there. If you're Shawn Michaels post comeback in 2002, I don't think there was too many more pure baby faces that were over in that time than Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels was like, just had a connection with the audience. And to eclipse Shawn, where people want you to win more than Shawn Michaels, I mean, you must be pretty over. And Benoit was that in that time. But that is, I have another one in my brain that I can say is like my choice, because it is kind of up there with that. But I know this is your kind of second one.
Yeah,
I've got another one as well, so it's fine. Okay. But like, that triple threat match is like 5 stars. There's nothing better.
Top notch stuff.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's fantastic. All right.
Do you want me to say? Do you want to go with your choice?
Yeah. Why don't you say the other one, because I technically brought that one up. Even though that was kind of an agreement one that we went off on a little bit. But so why don't you say your other one you have, and then I'll say, because technically I have one that I rank slightly higher than that one, so I still.
Well, this one's kind of on par. It might be just a little bit below it, but like considering what we just talked about. But the other one is actually like from this year. It's Bianca and Sasha. I don't think it's. I
have a star next to that one too.
It's like, you go back and watch that match.
Yeah, just, it's really good.
Take away everything around it. Okay, it's the first one-on-one women's match of in WrestleMania main event history. It's the first 2 black women main event. Whatever. Take that away. I mean, it's really freaking good. And I think, I feel like it was almost like Bianca Belair's coming out party in a sense. We talked about Brock and that year that he had. Look at Bianca Belair's year. From WrestleMania 36 to WrestleMania 37. Yeah, there was a little bit of stalling in between, which we get. But like, from the time she got drafted to SmackDown to the Royal Rumble, when she won the Royal Rumble from number 3?
3.
And then going into WrestleMania with Banks, who you could argue maybe was looked at as a step below Charlotte and Becky. I think people could argue that in the terms of like where the company presented you. Like Charlotte and Becky
That's
were,
fair.
there was the 4 horsewomen, but I think there was layers, whether people want to admit it or not. I'm not talking like from a wrestling whatever, but I'm just talking from where you were positioned.
Yeah.
And Banks was, I think, positioned a little lower. And we've heard Banks in interviews. She doesn't like not being number 1. And I mean that in a good way. She wants to be the best, and she believes that she is the best. And I think this was kind of an opportunity for her to go, there's no Bailey, there's no Charlotte, there's no Becky here. It's me.
Mhm.
She was the only 4 horsewomen wrestling on that show. That's pretty, in the terms of how WWE books women, that's a pretty significant deal. And to be the main event and to have a phenomenal wrestling match, like those two, I would never say, I don't mean it in this way that Banks carried Belair to a good match, because obviously Belair is very good, but like we hadn't seen what Belair could do in like a pressure cooker situation.
That type of moment.
We've seen Banks rise to the occasion on many, and we know what Banks can do, and I think we were all aware, and I think we were looking at it from an importance level, like, okay, they're going to main event, like this is going to be pretty special, but let's that aside, like wrestling wise, like it was. That hair whip is an all-time WrestleMania moment.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you know how WWE
100%.
are, and wrestling in a general, it's not about matches, it's about moments. And that Uchi, like that couldn't feel great. And like the actual, the specialness of Belair winning, like the right thing happened.
It felt like we saw a new star form in front of it. You know what I mean? Like,
and Belair,
we all knew she had the trajectory of it.
Yeah, it's...
like we all knew. We were like, oh, yeah, she's a star. And then she won the Rumble, and it was like, oh, yeah, like they're going with it. But when she actually had that match, and the match was that good, and she won it, it was like, wow, like, they're actually she's a star. Like, they're gonna make her a star. Like,
and you look at her now,
belongs in this conversation.
She has a very. I was watching SmackDown last week.
Oh, and that was a very good segment.
Yeah, when she picked them both up, and that moment at Crown Jewel. Say what you want about that event, but when she hits that, we've seen it before. She's done it on Kyrie and Io in NXT, and it was a cool moment. But when she does that at Crown Jewel, like that's going to be pretty special. And I was watching that. And to hear the crowd react the way they do, you lost in 26 seconds at SummerSlam. That could ruin a lot of people.
Yep.
And then you kind of booked in this weird situation where you're going against Becky Lynch, who is, admittedly, I'll be the first to admit that I was wrong. She can be a heel. The crowd can boo her. But there's still a connection with Becky that not a lot of other people have. Banks, again, a connection with the crowd that not a lot of people have. She would be the tweener of this role, I would really say, of these three. When you're put in against those two, who are arguably 2 of the best female performers ever, and you're still getting cheered, and you're still, like, we're rooting for you, in a sense of, like, we want you to be the one, that shows you're a pretty special talent, and you have a pretty good spot. Again, to lose in 26 seconds, we've seen that happen before with a lot of talent, and it's wrecked them. They haven't been able to recover from a booking standpoint, from a crowd connection standpoint. Like, she is undeniable when it comes to they have to book her in these situations now because she has a connection with the audience. Like, and that all stems from Rumble to Mania and that great match with Banks. And then not only that, no offense to this person at all, but to be put in a situation where you're working with Mella, who is kind of viewed as like someone who's not going to win, it can get boring fast, and Belair made it work.
I think there's something natural about her.
And she's a beast too. Like, an athletic standpoint, what the fuck? It's not fair.
Yeah, like she could ruin anybody. Like she's just next level strong, fast, pure, like one of the best athletes on the roster, period. And she just has such a likableness to her. Like she's just like, she has a swagger, but it's real.
And it's
like,
weird because she was such a good heel in NXT, and we're like, how could this woman ever be a babyface? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah,
but it's like now
now I can picture her being like face of the company.
I'm like, how
you
just
run with her?
Like, yes, okay, I can understand how you can be a heel, but it'll be like that'd be so hard to do now because you're so
Yeah, she's just
you're
cool.
so connected. Yeah, and like it doesn't come because listen, especially today, baby faces have a tendency to come off as really like whiny and unlikable,
Mhm.
and like it's so easy. And she honestly has all of like those traits in a sense of like I could understand why people wouldn't like her, but the way she presents it is so likable. Like it's
Yeah.
weird how it works for her. Like she is just a pure baby face. She really is.
Mhm. Yeah. And I know you said, like, at the beginning, you were like, "Hey, I'm taking all that extra stuff out of it. I just want to talk about the match and how good it
Oh
is."
yeah, but
But I do think the extra stuff matters.
yeah.
Like the fact that it was the first two women of color in a main event, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And for them to deliver on time, like, for them, as a white, I can't speak to the extra pressure or the
Me
extra
either.
whatever feelings or emotions that would
We
add to that
seen their
moment.
feelings. Like you felt it
Yeah,
even
they
if
were
you didn't.
crying when it started. They were openly tearing up
Yeah.
together in the ring, like looking at each other, like, "Let's
What
do this."
pressure?
You know what
Like
I
that's
mean?
such pressure to
Yeah,
deliver.
like,
Because you could have went and
yeah,
had a
and like,
dud and it would have been like at least it still happened. But like
yeah,
they didn't
exactly.
just
But when
show
you have
you
a
the important.
banger, it's like,
It's like they were like,
you know,
no, we're not just the main event because of these things. We're the main event because we're the best. I know
correct.
Bad Bunny, and that was
We
also
deserve to
very
be
good on that
here.
show.
Yeah,
But like they are
we're
the
here
best
because
match.
we're the best.
We're the main
We're
event.
here right now. Yeah, because we're the
And
best.
especially
And
coming
it was
from
like,
35, the main event with Ronda, Becky, and Charlotte. I don't think it's as bad as everybody says. I think the match was okay. It just had a bit of a weird finish. And it was a
I
very
agree with you.
long show, but it still was the first women to main event WrestleMania. You can't take that away
Hmm.
from them. And I think it still is very special. But from a wrestling standpoint, Bianca and Sasha was so much better.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I am for the 35 one. I am not anti Charlotte. I know we are both not anti Charlotte. We are pro
Nope.
Charlotte.
I'm
In
very.
my opinion, Charlotte shouldn't have been in the match. It should have just been Ronda and Becky one on one. If that's my only thing there, it did not make the match worse by any means. I agree with you personally. I think it was a
Okay.
decent. I thought it
It
was a
was
pretty
okay.
good match. It was okay, pretty good, decent. The ending was just a little fucked up, and that's just what happened. And
I don't know if it was by
whatever.
design. I don't know what happened in that main event. It's the
Yeah.
age old question. Did they botch the main event or was that how it was designed to look? So it protected
Yes.
Ronda. Who fucking
Correct.
knows? But the thing for me with that WrestleMania was about babyface moments. Seth, Kofi, Becky. And we got the
Yep.
fireworks and the double title hold at the end. So is what it is.
Yeah.
But
Correct.
Banks and Belair was seriously just a great wrestling match. And I feel like that kind of set up for a lot of things that Banks and Belair can kind of be on like this certain level now when they touch. It's really
Hmm.
important. And they always just produce really good stuff. So yeah, that would be my other one other than the triple threat. But they're pretty close in terms of like I know a lot of people are like, what about Austin and Rock? And like, but that WrestleMania 17 match was not it was fine, but it
Yeah.
was more about like the turn. And it was like the signal of the end of the Attitude Era, I think. That main event is the end of the Attitude Era well, at least in my opinion. But um
Yeah.
like it's not from a pure wrestling standpoint. Yep. I care
I
for
would
it.
I would make an argument that the 15 main event between Austin and The Rock was better than the 17 one. People remember the 17 one because WrestleMania 17 is a really good WrestleMania,
Yeah.
and the turn
I
at
mean,
the
the
end.
turn is
That's
because it's so talked about of like it should have happened. It
correct.
should have
You shouldn't have
happened.
done it, or it should have happened this way instead
Yeah.
of this way, or whatever.
What do
Like,
you, by
I
the
feel
way,
like
while we're here, do you think it should have happened?
Yeah.
You hesitated, so no.
No,
I
that's not. I think they should have just handled it different. I think you could have played a cool story where, like, he did whatever it took to win. So he's kind of a bad
so
guy, but
you
he
think
wasn't fully aligned with
you
Vince.
don't
I
like him
think once you
aligned with
fully
Vince?
align with Vince, it's like, oh, but you
But
hated him
like,
so
but okay,
much.
okay. If he just did it that way, right? If he just like did anything he could to win, like cheated and all that, I don't think we would be talking about it in the way that we would talk about it right now.
It's probably not. But I mean, that led to, like, the heel stuff that he did with Angle, and they were kind
Was
of
funny.
goofy, and like Yeah, like Stone Cold did it well. I just think
He admits that it was the wrong thing to do, but he wanted to try it.
he says he should have stunned Vince. Like they should have shook hands and then he stunned Vince and then it could have just you could have took it whatever way you want to take it. Like that's what
And then
he
you had
thinks
like him
that should have
aligned with
happened
like
now.
Triple H, and it was like the 2-man power trip.
Yeah, the 2-man power
yeah.
trip and
then you went into the
So there
and then the invasion and everything like that.
yeah, then he was on
happened.
what?
Well,
He was on the invasion side and
he was
like,
the leader of
okay.
the alliance. Like it was
Yeah, and it was like, all right, like yeah,
It was
you're
odd.
a heel, but like I would never pick you as being like anti WWE.
And then he went he like soon followed into like he would work with like by the end of the year as a face again, wasn't he? Because he was working with like Booker
Yeah.
T and
Yes. Yeah. So, but yeah, well, the other one that I had on my list, so we just picked each other's really. My voice cracks. We just picked each other's because the other one that I had on my list was Sasha and Bianca.
okay.
So well, I'm good. We had like two longer form conversations about the two that seem to be near the top of our list.
I know a lot of people will be like, what about this main event? What about this main event? And I understand there is some, but there's also a lot like, for example, WrestleMania 18 with Jericho and Triple H. We don't talk about that match. We talk about Rock and Hogan because, by the way, Rock and Hogan from a wrestling standpoint, not that wonderful, but like it was just the crowd participation and the actual moment of it. But then there's other main events that happen in the time of WrestleManias that aren't good. I don't like Miz and Cena because I think WrestleMania 27 is the worst WrestleMania of all time. I'll put that out there into the world. Nothing good happened on that show. Even Triple H and Undertaker, if you look at all the stuff they did prior and like just all the stuff they've ever done, it is not their best work. They've done 17 was way better than that, and 28 was way better than like end of an era, like up there with one of the best WrestleMania matches ever. So like, WrestleMania 27 is just purely bad. 24, I always look at because WrestleMania 24 is my favorite WrestleMania of all time. Okay. Edge and Taker was good, but I don't think it's upper echelons of like greatest WrestleMania main events ever. Because there was better matches on that show.
Yeah, I agree. It has, in my opinion, it has the greatest referee moment.
With the
arguably
Charles
ever.
Robinson.
When Charles had to make the run. Oh my God.
There was so many like memes
slid
of that.
perfectly in. It was a perfect false. Oh man, tremendous.
But like that had Rick and Shawn, which I think is like from a story standpoint, like wow. And I mean that was Ric Flair's best wrestling match that he's had in years at that point. Because you have Shawn Michaels in there and he's the greatest ever.
Of course. I think one that WrestleMania 31.
Oh,
it's the first Lesnar Reigns match. It's the first one. They beat the crap out of each other. They were having a really good match, and then Rollins does the cash in, which makes it technically on the bill. It's a billed as a triple threat.
Yeah,
because it ended up being a triple threat.
Yeah.
But Rollins cashing in, Rollins winning, which was kind of out of left field. I don't think anybody was really expecting that to happen.
I think a lot of people were expecting that cash in on the next night.
Like on the Raw. I don't think they were expecting it at Mania in the main event.
Yeah.
So the fact that they did that, and if you go back and you watch it and you watch just the Lesnar and Reigns portion of it, like that's they were beating the shit.
Especially because at that time, like it was like the first time that
Reigns, was Roman's first main event,
and like
that was his.
It was like that boo would start, like the crowd kind of rejecting him, and like it was an interesting time because we didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah, so I think that one is kind of one that gets, under the radar a little bit. The Daniel Bryan versus Batista versus Randy Orton at 30 as well.
Very good. But that was about
the Undertaker
Bryan
losing right before it.
Woo!
The Undertaker losing right before it kind of dulled the crowd a little bit. So
Bryan
it took the crowd a little bit to get back.
Once they were there, though, they were.
That's Daniel Bryan.
WrestleMania 30, I always say, is like the perfect roller coaster of emotions because you start with Austin and Rock and Hogan, like, and all of that shenanigan that went on for like 20 minutes, and then you have Bryan and Triple H have a really good match, like a really good match, and then you kind of go through this wave because you get through, all the stuff in between. No offense, but the stuff in between, and then you get to like Brock and Taker, and you're like, well, this is gonna. It wasn't even that great of a match, like, to be honest.
No, because he was.
He was banged up, and then he lost, and you're like, oh my god. And
Like, he
then
lost. Like, what the hell?
my biggest
And then it's
gripe
like,
with
oh, here's
that,
Daniel Bryan.
well, my biggest gripe was that was right after they put the freaking girls, who as you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
I loved at that time. It was AJ and everything. They couldn't give a shit. Nothing, whatever followed that, you
Nothing
weren't gonna.
mattered.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't a. I'm not even meaning this in an attack on women. It just was no. You could put anything on after that, and they wouldn't have gave a
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
They were just the.
100%.
But like that is just such a roller coaster. But 31. 31, I don't.
Underrated.
Yeah. Okay, sure. I
Go back and watch it. Just go back and watch it.
I've watched it this year, to be completely honest.
Oh, have you?
Yeah. I
I
don't know. It's just long.
Well, see, once they got to that point, though, a lot of them were just.
But I
they're
mean,
just
I don't
so
mind a
long.
long WrestleMania as long as you keep it kind of moving. But like you had like Triple H and Sting, and you had like the ladder match
Earlier
at
in
the
the night,
start.
it was
The ladder match was really good. The ladder match was
Orton
really good.
and
Seth
was
yeah.
good. The cool RKO off the stomp.
Yeah,
That's
okay, yeah.
one that they show a lot.
Yeah, all right. I understand. I don't think it's bad by any stretch of the word.
One of the mess ups, I think, is Undertaker and Bray Wyatt. I think Bray Wyatt would have been. I think Bray Wyatt, obviously, it
was like
Taker lost the year before.
It was awkward because it was like, how do we go here from he just lost? Like, does it matter anymore?
And they fought.
Does
And I
it
remember,
care?
like, they have the two coolest entrances, and it was during the daytime. Still, it was still light out.
It was
when they
weird.
Started, it was like,
it
no,
was awkward.
This has to be at night with the, the lighters and the Undertaker entrance. Like, he's coming out as daylight. Like, I don't,
It was all.
That had Rusev on the tank, though.
Oh,
Rusev
that's
and
right.
Cena, which Rusev should have won that match. That's another.
But it did spawn the Cena US Open Challenge, which I think was the best part of Raw for a few months. So, but like, yeah, there was a lot of things on that show. But like, there's other main events that I know that, like you look at, like, for example, I mean, well, WrestleMania 23, actually, shout out to that.
Yes, I was going to say Cena and Shawn Michaels is a good
But
one.
also, Batista and Taker was on that show, and that was phenomenal. It was like two really good world title matches at that show. But then, like, 22, like, I don't care for Triple H and Cena. No offense. But, like, there was so much stuff better on that show. Like, Edge and Foley, Mickey and Trish. Like, you had Shawn Michaels and Vince McMahon was, like, like match of the year. Like, it was fantastic. It was so good. Yeah. Like, genuinely so good. Like, if you haven't watched that match and you're like, Vince McMahon and Shawn, it's phenomenal. They beat the shit out of one another. Like, it's really good. On a show with Edge and Foley with a flaming table, and it's still arguably a better, like, hardcore match than that, arguably. It's really good. Like, and like, you had that whole story, and it was like McMahonism and God and all of this bullshit. But like, it was so good. Like, it was genuinely so good.
Yeah.
Like,
it was,
that Mania is really good, by the way.
The card now. Yeah.
It's a fun Mania. That, like, the second Money in the Bank.
Undertaker fought who on that one? Mark Henry?
Yeah, in a casket match. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, Rey Mysterio went against Orton and Angle in a triple threat.
And it was really short, but really good. Like, it was really short, but it was really good.
Yeah. Man, this is a good.
It's a good Mania.
That Edge and Foley match is fantastic.
And like, it's in Chicago. I just remember the crowd.
That's when CM Punk was on the car. Wasn't
he? And like and I lost my train of thought. What was I going to say? Oh, and like the crowd were so behind so many people. I know I always go to Mickey Trish, but that's one of the greatest female matches in the history of WrestleMania. The crowd was so, like, Trish Stratus had done nothing wrong to that crowd, but they didn't care for her. They were like, it's Mickey, 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 Mickey. Can you remember that crowd for Mickey James in that? Like, they were for Mickey over Trish. Yeah. And Trish was the golden goose, wasn't she? She was she was the ultimate baby face, and they were just there for Psycho.
The crowd was like, no, we want Mickey.
And she was a psycho and just was in love. And then, of course, that was the moment. I watched that Mania live, and I remember seeing the, how do I describe this in a confrontational way? The interesting placement of her hand, I guess you could say. And the lick.
I don't know if I know that.
You know, when she grabs Mickey grabs Trish's area.
Trish.
Like,
this is...
Yeah. Mickey grabs...
This is after the match or during the match?
It's the finish of the match. She, like, They don't have it on the
I feel
network,
like
and
I
it's
have to go
edited.
back and watch
It's
this. I
edited.
remember who wins.
It's
and
edited out of the network, so you have to find it
Oh, okay.
on. So
Like
okay,
online.
so I'm just gonna say this, and I'm sorry if it's a little
For
it's a
the
little.
private area.
She gets her fingers. People that are listening won't see this, but for the YouTube video, here you go. She kind of gets her hand like this, and then
Oh,
and then licks her
gotcha.
fingers like, and
Gotcha.
then she does like the Stratisfaction chick kick and wins. Mickey has said on many times that she got in a lot of trouble for that. Because she thought it was
I
like,
would bet.
she was like, oh, I thought it was with the story. Because obviously the story of that was like, she was in love with Trish Stratus. And
Yeah,
like,
she was in love with her. Yeah.
so she thought that would be like a great WrestleMania moment. And Vince was like,
Vince was like,
well, she dropped the
"No,
title at the next
just kidding."
pay-per-view. So put it that way.
Yeah, so that was probably her punishment. I'm sure they probably had
Mm.
bigger ideas for her to give her that.
Again, a
moment, that
WrestleMania
Mania, and
debut to win the championship
yeah,
in your WrestleMania
that
debut.
tells me that the initial plans probably weren't for you to have that for a month.
And then they gave it back to Trish, and then all systems were flying.
Yeah.
But yeah, that moment for anyone, it is available on the internet somewhere. I know you can find like the unedited version of that, because it's edited on the network, where it just pans to the crowd and then it comes back, so you
Gotcha.
can't see it anymore on the network or Peacock, whatever. But the Great Mania, that one, 21 is a great Mania with not a great main event.
Very good.
I don't love Batista and Triple H.
The Batista Triple H. Yeah.
Yes, I watched it. Not very
21
long ago.
though was a very, very, that I feel like in most discussions you'll hear or read about, like a lot of people think like 19, 21, those are like the ones that you hear the most as being some of, or like at the top of the list of like best WrestleManias.
That Money in the Bank
that
is so good. It's still the best Money in the Bank ever, and it's so good. Like Shelton in that match, I will never forget Shelton Benjamin in that match. Till the day I did.
So good. And then Undertaker fought Orton. That was a good one.
Mm-hmm.
The Legend Killer. What was the
JBL and Cena?
Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels had like a submission match.
There was just a normal match, but it was fucking phenomenal. But like,
yeah, it was like 30 minutes long. I remember it being like a long match.
Everybody can come after me for this, but their match at Vengeance 2005 was better than their match at WrestleMania 21. I mean,
now
anything.
Have you just rewatched that yet? Are you up to that yet in your 2005? So you already got there. All right.
I just watched it like maybe 3 or 4 days ago. And I'm like, this is better than 21.
Okay.
Like it's better.
Okay.
A better wrestling match. But I mean, Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle, I don't think there's a chance for that to be bad. But that match at WrestleMania 21 was like, what the hell? Like, this is ridiculously good. Like, ridiculously good. But yeah, there's so many manias that we could talk about. We could talk about till the cows come home. Like, this match should have been on last, and this match was better than the last match on the show. And that happens more often than not with WrestleMania. It happens more often than not with wrestling.
I would say there's been 37 of them. I would say in easily more than half. If you went through and were like, hey, what was the standout match of this WrestleMania? It's not the main event.
Here's the final question, because WrestleMania 17 is looked at like universally as the best WrestleMania ever.
Yes.
Do you think the main event is still like the biggest thing that happened on that show?
That happened on the show?
Like the biggest
TLC match is the biggest.
Okay.
Thing. I think Edge's spear specifically
is bigger than the turn.
At the time,
let's be honest, we don't give a fuck about the match itself. Like, it's the turn.
Yeah.
So is it?
No, I think the way that it played out.
So that's still the biggest thing that happened on that show.
It probably, in that moment, Stone Cold becoming a bad guy and going with Vince it probably was. But I think now, if you look back on it, 20 years later, we just had WrestleMania 37. 20 years later, because of how the turn played out, I guess, in the storyline of Stone Cold Steve Austin, I feel like the TLC match is a more memorable.
It's the best TLC match of all time. Like, it's so.
Oh yeah.
No disrespect to the first.
That spear with Edge, that
TLC,
spear from Edge to Jeff, like that is going to be shown for the rest of time.
Along with, by the way, yes, that spear was fantastic, but there were so many things that happened in that match was so wildly just what the fuck are you doing to your bodies? Like, I will always remember that match for, yes, the spear, obviously. But there was I don't know why I remember this. I don't know why, but there was a moment where Lita hit Spike Dudley with a chair,
Oh, yeah.
and it like,
and it folded over his head.
and I was like, holy
Yeah.
shit! Like chair shots
Right.
to the head, I know they're what they are, but like, oh my god! And there was a moment where like Matt and I think Bubba were on the ladder, and someone pushed them off, and like they just disintegrated the tables. Like it was like splat, and it just like, oh my god, they go like push from inside the ring to the outside of the ring. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. And like Jeff Hardy jumping off of the big ladder, and like,
The big
what
ladder.
the
Yeah.
hell, dude? Seriously, like
And
it's
then
ridiculous.
they had what was the match on that one? They had Kurt Angle fought Benoit. They had a really good match on there. That was the early Triple H Undertaker match, which was
Pretty good.
It was good.
Pretty damn good.
Yeah, it was good. The main event. The match was solid. I still think 15
Oh,
is better as a
yeah.
match,
I think,
but the match was solid, and obviously the turn was,
I think no. Do I think 19
Uh-oh,
Austin Rock is better than 17?
19 Austin Rock is really good, but Austin was like messed up. Like Austin was in the hospital the day before. Like I didn't feel like he was at his, and it's his last match.
It
so.
still is. It still is his last match ever.
It still is. I think, out of all this time, I think everybody kind of viewed Shawn as the guy that was going to honor his retirement until he didn't. But I think Austin's going to be the guy that is like, yeah, no, I'm never coming back.
Yeah, well, you'd think he'd already done it by now if he was going to do it.
He still looks, every time you see him,
he's jacked.
In fantastic shape. He's jacked. Like
he hasn't aged.
Throw on.
The man hasn't aged in years.
Exact same.
And I think to kind of wrap up this conversation, it'd be doing a disservice to us to not at least talk about Rock and Cena. I know that they're looked at.
Years.
I don't.
Back-to-back years.
The first one's better than the second one, I think.
I agree.
It was once in a lifetime. It wasn't about the title.
They built it for a full year. That match, they built it.
And I don't like WrestleMania 29 as well, so I think that probably looks at it like that a little bit. But they did build it for a full year. Good on them. But listen, they're Rock and Cena matches.
Yeah.
They're not bad.
Were you shocked that they had Cena lose the first one?
No.
Like, did you just assume that Cena was winning?
No, I thought Rock was going to win.
Rock
was like on his way to being one of the biggest celebrities in the world at that point. Do you not think WWE are going to cash that check?
Yeah, I thought it was I didn't foresee
and I think,
that long.
And I always thought that Rock and Cena would have multiple matches, and I thought always Cena would win the last one, wherever that may be. I didn't think they were going to go back-to-back Manias, but I thought it might be like a SummerSlam thing, I never thought Rock was coming back for one match. I thought it was going to be, Rock for a little while and then float off into the sunset, wherever it did. But, I mean,
it's very rare that they do.
They were there. It was in Miami, the first one.
Yeah.
So it was like Rock's homeland. And then you go to 29 in New Jersey.
New York, right?
Well,
New Jersey, New York. It's
and
New Jersey, by the way. The stadium's in New Jersey.
Yeah, MetLife Stadium.
They'll call it New York, but it's
New Jersey.
Jersey.
But I'll always be like this, and I know it said, we beat it into the ground with a lot of people, but Punk really should have been in that match.
Yes, he should have. I think that's why.
I do
agree with you. 28 is better than 29 to begin with.
Oh, way better.
But I think
I know Punk fought Taker, and that's a pretty big spot. But
that was a great take.
But you're coming off of end of an era, and it was so good. Which arguably we all thought was that Taker's last match.
Yeah, the three of them at the top of the ramp.
It was really good. Phenomenal. And you're coming off of that, and again, Punk and Taker was good, but that was really the standout from that WrestleMania because there was not a lot else. It wasn't.
No, and it's one of those things where that was Punk's year. That he had, to me,
4,
and
3,
to
4.
you, and to a lot of us, he had earned the right to main event WrestleMania. He had earned that right, and I get it. The Rock, one of the all-time greats in wrestling, and at that point, you said, he was on the way to becoming the biggest movie star on the
100%.
planet. I get it, but you could have done Rock Cena 2, and it not been for the title, maybe, or
and it would still main event.
Said, make it a triple threat with Punk in there, or something. I just felt I think a lot of us felt like CM Punk should have been
It should have been,
in the
I
main event.
think, a triple threat, like elimination match, and you could have got Punk out of there at some point, and then you still had your Rock Cena 2
Yeah.
vibe. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mhm.
But yeah, we have to at least mention them because they are pretty significant in the terms of
Oh, yeah,
WrestleMania
for
main
sure.
events. Like, to do that is pretty wild. But again, a lot of matches just weren't the main event, and they were so much better.
Yeah, I know. WrestleMania is it's been lucky that way. And there are, like, obviously, like you said, there are a lot of not great matches, and then some matches that are like good but not at that level. Like, there's a lot of matches that we could
There's
go
a
through,
lot of
but
matches.
those are yeah. But I feel like we hit the ones that are near the top.
Yeah,
So
definitely,
yeah,
100%. But that was fun to talk about WrestleMania main events because you kind of get your mind
right.
spinning. And it's, again, a lot of people are going to throw out a lot of things. So in the comments,
Hmm.
if you're watching on YouTube or get us on socials on the posts that I put up, you know how I usually do things when I release stuff. Get at us and say, hey, this is the best main event ever, for your information. To prove us wrong, I guess. Well, it's not really proving
Yeah.
wrong in wrestling. There's no
No,
such
but
thing as
I
there's no such thing as your opinion being wrong when it
yeah,
comes to what your favorite it's your favorite.
correct. Correct.
If that means that it is Miz and Cena from WrestleMania 27, it's your prerogative. I mean, I don't think many people will say that, but
I
hey,
might
you never know.
yeah. I don't know. I might rag on you in a very friendly way if that is really your favorite. Maybe.
It's
But
a
I have no problem getting into some Twitter banter back and forth about other so
exactly.
in the comments, like, or if you enjoy, he usually tags me and I'll retweet and
Mhm.
if you have a different opinion, get up in. I
We
will have
have
a discourse
our
on
if you're watching on YouTube, our social media handles for Twitter are right below us. So
Hmm.
tweet at us, or if you're watching here on YouTube, leave a comment. If you're listening to the audio stuff though, we're always open and we want chatter about
Oh yeah.
wrestling. It's always fun. Keep it civil, don't attack us, but like keep it civil
Yeah,
and we'll keep it civil
exactly.
with
We
you
we can
guys.
have friendly conversation.
Because
We can be
trust me,
friendly
if I can
conversation.
say this for myself, I'm pretty sure you are the same. If you come at me and attack me, I simply will not respond.
Correct. Correct. Yeah,
You're
you're
just
not
not
gonna get
getting my
anything out of me
time.
on that
No.
end. Yeah, no.
But that will be fun to hear what your WrestleMania main event. Remember, last match on the show. Last match on the
Yes.
show. Remember
Technical
that.
main event because it is the
Quote
last
unquote
match of
last
the
thing.
show.
Last match of the show. So get us on our socials and here in the comments on YouTube. If you are watching on YouTube, leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell so you're getting notifications. For people that are a fan of my stuff here on YouTube, mainly like my stream stuff from Twitch, everyone knows that I upload my full streams. It's happening a little different lately. I'm trying to get you guys to watch my live streams, and then they're getting uploaded a little later on YouTube. So you might notice that it's like a lot of videos are dropping at like midnight my time. So for a lot of you guys in the States, it'll be early morning, like 8-9 o'clock in the morning, and they'll kind of upload. But it seems to be working out well that way because I don't know. But I'm just trying to change up my upload schedule a little bit, and I've got some other stuff that's happening, and yeah. So catch my streams, and not only that. Yes, I do go, everybody. Everyone knows that I've been away from work for the last month, but I do go back next week. But my schedule is changing at work a little bit. So I'm going to be streaming a lot more because I'm moving to
Nice.
evening shifts at work. So they kind of asked me if I wanted to do evening shifts, and I said, yeah. I can stream in the mornings. I can watch wrestling all the time. Like, I'm never going to really have a problem. I'm going to start to get weekends off soon, like every second weekend
Oh, that's
off,
nice.
which has never
Oh,
happened to
that'd
me
be
my whole
wonderful.
time in,
I was
you
gonna
know,
say I've never
retail.
in my life because
Retail.
we both work in retail. Uh, since I have been a child, really, since I've been working from the ripe old age
Mm-hmm.
of like 16 or 17, I have never worked a job where I've had weekends off. That's
It's,
a figment of
I
my
was not,
imagination at this point.
trust me,
So,
I was not going to knock it down. I was like, every second weekend off? Yeah, all right, I'll do
yes,
that.
please.
Yes, I got to work
Yeah.
evenings, and evenings are kind of a bit meh. But I mean,
Yeah.
whatever, it is what it is. I can sleep in all the time. I can.
Mhm.
It's a little
Yeah.
easier for me in that sense. And like, so yeah, I am moving very soon to a new schedule. So like, I'll be streaming a lot more for you guys, and I'll be a bit more available with some things. So who knows? Who knows what will happen? But yeah, so that happens all soon. Other than that, I think it's just the see you later. You know what I mean? Anything coming up for you? Probably just your normal stuff, JPJ, I'm assuming.
Yeah, my normal stuff on Love Wrestling. By the time this drops tonight at 8:30, Thursday night at 8:30 between two beards. But yeah, the normal stuff over at Love Wrestling. I do a couple shows over there, and you can catch some of Josh's great stuff over there too. So, give us a follow or
Oh
subscribe over
yeah,
there. But yeah,
Legacy
you can
of.
check
Oh
me
my
out.
god. Thank you
It
so
was
much,
amazing, by the
everybody,
way. The
for that.
ECW one
And
was
the
incredible.
Sasha
The
Banks
Sasha
one,
one also
yeah,
very good.
doing really
I
well.
haven't
So
physically talked to you since both of them. So
yeah, but
both
you were in
really,
the
really
chat
good.
for I
Yeah.
think the ECW one, but
Yes.
man, oh man, I was, you know how nervous I was releasing that shit. I was like, oh fuck, because it was just so
Yeah.
big, and I was like, how do I keep people engaged? I cut that down, by the way, everyone, for a little behind the scenes. That thing, whoa, hello, my microphone. That thing was like an hour and 20 minutes at one point, and I cut it down to 45 minutes or something like that. So, I mean, I tried to
Pretty
keep
good.
people in. I know not everyone has that amount of time. It's not the people have short attention spans. But yeah, sorry to butt in on your thing, but I just completely
No,
forgot
that's
about that. But yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
But thank you for all the
There you
love,
go.
everyone. Oh, it was fun. But yeah,
But that's it for me, man. Yeah, just looking forward to getting back after this next week. New question, new category. This is fun, man. We just kind of
yeah, it's a vibe.
like I think we thought it was gonna be. Like just us just kind of vibing and
It's the one
shooting
thing
the
I
shit
don't
about a
really
certain
worry
topic,
about,
and
like views and stuff like that on. I'm not fussed about that kind of stuff, because it's just like, if you want to listen, if you want to watch, that's fine. But I'm just having a good time every week. And,
yeah,
instead of just having a conversation with you, why not just upload it? You know what I mean?
yeah,
So
of course.
I
Yeah.
kind of like that about this show. I don't feel pressure of, like, when
Yeah.
you make video content, and like when you do stuff where it's a bit more like, okay, I want people to watch this, I want people to interact with me. Yeah, of course I want people to watch this, but also at the same time, I'm just like, it's very casual in a good way. And it's
Yes.
just very,
Yes.
yeah, it's just very, and it's easy. No offense to anybody that's doing podcasts, but this is not hard. It's really not
I'd agree.
hard. It's
I would
just
agree. I would
record,
agree.
upload. It's so simple in terms
Yeah.
of like what we're doing, and it's just so easy to talk. Really,
Yeah.
I don't think we have much of a problem with that. But
No, I think you and I are we're okay when it comes to that.
yeah, we can talk underwater, so that's a good thing. We're going to. I'm going to. I would assume that we can we've got a kind of our foot in the door with this kind of show now. You kind of know the vibe, everyone. We might start looking at maybe adding some guests sometime. We might try and get some people from the wonderful world of Twitter to come in and pick a question and kind of vibe with us. I think that'll be a lot of fun. Now that we've got our feet wet and we kind of know how we kind of vibe with how we do shows, we might start adding in some people. Maybe I'll get that bitch Spencer in here.
Oh, I don't know. You've been trying to fight him for a while now. He might duck you.
Yeah, exactly. He's too
He might
scared.
duck you.
Hear that, Spencer? If you're listening to
Yeah.
this, Spencer, you scared? You scared? I know you're scared. It's
He might be
alright.
challenging you. Maybe if there ends up being a change the game too. I mean, he might be challenging you to a fight.
I'll fly on over, mate. I'll fly.
I know
on
you
over.
will. I know you've been itching to get after him for a while now,
I'll
so.
hit him with I don't know. I'll do like a V trigger or something. I could do a pretty sick V trigger, and he boom. I'll do the
I would pay
Saray,
to see it.
the
I would pay to
Saray
see
drop
it. If
kick.
that was
Just
on the
I'll
bill,
get him in there. Bam.
if that was on the bill, I'm paying to see it. I don't care if I have to fly, walk. I'm there.
I'll go over there by boat, mate. I'll go over there and I will. I could throw a mean drop kick. I'm pretty sure. Maybe a little elbow action, a little boom. I'll cheat. I don't care about cheating.
I'll ring announce it if he'd allow me. Like I'm all on board.
He can have all the people, all the wonderful, famous people that he has supporting Spencer. I'll be the little shitbag heel that does a little low blow, maybe a little irate. I don't care. I don't give a fuck. I'll take Spencer on. So maybe we'll get Spencer on this show at some point. And he'll be in my land, and I'll have him like down the bottom, and I'll be like, ugh, mute him. I'm just gonna constantly mute him.
Yeah, just
whoopsies.
mute him when he starts talking. Oops, my bad.
I'm gonna talk so much shit, and someone's gonna send this to Spencer, and he's gonna be like, "What the fuck?" I do love Spencer bits. That's why I tease him.
We all do.
It's just fun to pick on him. He picks on me, so it's fine.
Yeah,
it's fun. But until next Thursday here on the J&J Power Hour, we are out of here. We don't know what we're talking about next week. We'll find out. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? That's the beauty of this show. But until next week, everyone. Bye.